We're counting down the 10 forgotten features that once made sailboats truly bulletproof. From hidden reinforcements below the waterline to safety details erased in the name of comfort, these survival-driven innovations were engineered for sailors who valued making it home over lounging at anchor. Each item on this list earned its place because it solved the kinds of problems no modern brochure dares to mention, problems that become life and death when the storm hits and the engine fails. Why did these features vanish, and which missing piece could put your voyage at risk without you even knowing? Let's begin with number 10. In the 10th place, the Skeg-Hung Rudder stands as the unsung guardian beneath classic blue water hulls. A skeg is more than just a fin. It is a structural spine molded from thick fiberglass or bronze, running ahead of the rudder and anchoring deep into the hull. Its job is simple: shield the rudder from the full force of an impact. When a submerged log or container drifts into your path, the skeg takes the blow and spreads the shock across the hull, instead of letting it concentrate at a single vulnerable point. On a modern boat with a spade rudder, the rudder hangs exposed and unsupported. Hit something at speed, and the spade's stock can shear off, leaving you instantly without steering. Surveys show spade rudders fail at 20 to 30% lower impact energy than their skeg-protected counterparts. The 1979 Fastnet race drove this lesson home. Boats with Skeg-Hung rudders finished battered but steerable, while spade-equipped yachts often lost control. The surveyor's rule holds true: if you hit something with a skeg, you bounce. If you hit it with a spade, you often lose steering. For the voyager, this is not an academic point. It is the difference between a bad day and abandoning ship. Number 9. The Encapsulated Keel stands as the unsung backbone beneath many classic cruising hulls. Unlike the bolt-on fins found on most modern production boats, an encapsulated keel is molded as a single piece with the hull, sealing the lead ballast inside thick layers of fiberglass. There are no external bolts to corrode, no vulnerable joint to flex or crack under stress. When a grounding does occur, even at hull speed, the energy spreads across the entire structure, typically leaving only a scraped bottom and a bruised ego. Insurance surveyors know this well. The majority of catastrophic keel failures, from total loss to expensive repairs, involve bolt-on designs where the impact shears or loosens the bolts, sometimes creating the dreaded smile, a visible separation at the hull keel joint. Encapsulated keels avoid this fate almost entirely. Maintenance is reduced to inspecting for surface damage, not torque-checking rows of rust-prone fasteners. While some owners chase the performance edge of a deep fin, the voyager values a keel that can take a pounding and keep the ballast exactly where it belongs. In the world of marine claims and post-grounding surveys, the difference is not theoretical. Encapsulated keels routinely turn disasters into mere inconveniences. 8th place. The bridge deck draws a hard line between survival and disaster when a breaking wave slams the cockpit. This raise threshold, often 12 to 18 inches high, sits just inside the companionway. Its job is brutally simple. When the sea pours over the stern, the bridge deck blocks the flood from racing straight into the heart of the boat. On a classic Hallberg Rassy or Contessa, that solid barrier buys precious minutes. Even when the cockpit fills, the living space stays dry, giving the crew time to bail, pump, or brace for the next hit. The urgency becomes clear in staged wave tank tests. A modern walk-through companionway designed for easy access surrenders the cabin in under 60 seconds. Water rushes down the steps and soaks the electrics, bedding, and charts before anyone can react. The bridge deck, by contrast, halts the surge cold. The difference is not subtle. It is the gap between a manageable mess in the cockpit and a total loss of the boat interior. Walk-through designs became popular for comfort, letting owners stroll below as if entering a beach house. But the physics of a pooping wave never changed. Thousands of gallons of water will always seek the lowest point. Without that raised sill, the ocean claims the cabin in a single, unstoppable rush. Surveyors know what to look for. A worn, well-tabbed bridge deck means resilience. A flush entry means risk. For any sailor venturing offshore, the bridge deck is not an inconvenience. It is a test. Will this boat keep the sea out when it matters most? In the end, the bridge deck is the silent wall that stands between a dry bunk and a flooded, sinking interior. Number 7. The small cockpit and efficient drainage system stands as a silent guardian against one of the most overlooked threats at sea, cockpit flooding. On a classic blue water cruiser, the cockpit is intentionally compact, often just large enough for the helm and a couple of crew. This is not about comfort, it is about physics. When a breaking wave dumps water into the cockpit, the volume it can hold is strictly limited. A modern party cockpit, by contrast, can trap up to 2 tons of seawater, almost 1,800 gallons, turning the stern into a lead weight and dangerously altering the boat's trim. That sudden mass pushes the stern down, shifting the center of gravity and making the boat sluggish to recover, especially in following seas. The danger is not just theoretical. University flow rate tests show that small cockpits with properly sized scuppers drain in minutes, while oversized cockpits can take far longer, sometimes overwhelming the drains and risking a second even larger wave before the water is gone. This is why surveyors make a point of inspecting cockpit drains, checking not just their diameter, but also their location and whether they can be blocked by gear or debris. The audit is simple: the drains should be clear, the cockpit should be tight, and the volume should be minimal. Old builders understood the trade-off. Sacrifice a little space in the cockpit, and you gain a massive safety margin when the sea comes calling. It is a lesson written in gallons and pounds, not just nostalgia. Once the deck is secure, the focus turns below, to the systems that keep the crew alive when the storm is raging outside. Number 6. The Sea Berth is where the realities of offshore life collide with the comforts promised by modern design. In a true blue water cruiser, the Sea Berth is a narrow bunk, set high on the hull and lined with a sturdy lee cloth. It is not designed for lounging, it is engineered for survival. The geometry is no accident, just wide enough to cradle a sleeping body, just snug enough to keep you from being flung across the cabin when the boat lurches to port or starboard. The lee cloth, rigged taut from bunk edge to overhead, is more than a sheet of canvas. It is a safety net that keeps an exhausted crew member in place when the world tilts unexpectedly. Contrast this with the island queen beds found on many modern production cruisers, wide, flat, and inviting in the marina, but utterly useless when the boat is heeled over in a seaway. In rough weather, these beds become launching pads. Crew injury reports from ocean passages tell the same story: bruised ribs, concussions, even broken arms from being thrown out of unsecured bunks during sudden rolls. Fatigue isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Without true sea berths, real rest is impossible, and an exhausted sailor is a liability when conditions deteriorate. Every surveyor knows the truth. You can sleep on a queen bed at anchor, but you survive at sea in a proper berth, wedged in, lee cloth up, ready for whatever the ocean throws next. Number 5. Dorade events are the unsung lungs of the classic ocean-going sailboat. These cowled scoops, perched atop sturdy Dorade boxes, channel fresh air below decks while blocking the green water that crashes across the cabin top. The genius is in their simplicity. As wind forces air into the cowl, internal baffles and drains shed seawater and allow only clean air to pass through. Even in a full gale, Dorades keep the cabin ventilated without risking a single drop inside. You cannot open a window in a gale. You need Dorades. On a 35-foot cruiser, a pair of Dorades can move enough air to refresh the entire cabin every hour without drawing a single amp from the batteries. Modern boats, built for comfort at the dock, rely on flush hatches and powered fans to keep the air moving. But when the power dies, when the engine fails and the batteries run flat, those systems fall silent. The air goes stale, humidity rises, and the crew is left gasping in a sealed capsule. Ocean crossing case studies show crews forced to seal all hatches during storms, relying solely on Dorades to keep the air breathable. Passive airflow becomes a matter of endurance, not comfort. Maintenance is minimal. Keep the drains clear, check for cracks, and a Dorade will outlast any electric fan. For the Voyager, Dorades are not a luxury. They are life support, silent, tireless, and always on duty when the storm hits. Number 4. The deep bilge is the hidden vault that separates a survivable leak from a full-blown systems emergency. On a classic blue water hull, the bilge is not just a shallow puddle at the bottom. It is a sump that plunges 2 to 3 feet below the cabin's sole. This depth is no accident. When water finds its way inside, whether from a dripping shaft seal or a failed hose clamp, it collects in the deep bilge safely below the wiring, batteries, and engine. The pumps are set at the lowest point, where even a single gallon of water is quickly whisked away before it can do any harm. Surveyors know to drop a tape measure into the bilge. Anything less than 18 inches is a red flag. Contrast that with the flat pans of modern production boats, where the bilge is barely a hand's width deep. Here, the first gallon of water does not just sit quietly, it spreads across the floorboards, soaking insulation, corroding electrical panels, and shorting out vital systems. It only takes a coffee spill or a minor leak to turn the cabin into a swamp, threatening everything from the engine starter to the navigation electronics. Corrosion incidents rise sharply in these shallow designs, with survey records noting frequent electrical failures traced directly to water intrusion. The deep bilge is more than old-fashioned engineering, it is a deliberate defense. It isolates trouble, it buys time, and it turns a minor leak into a manageable nuisance. For anyone serious about offshore reliability, measuring bilge depth and checking pump pickups is not routine, it is the first line of survival. Number 3. The rub rail and internal tabbing form the quiet backbone of a bulletproof hull. Along the shear, a thick strip of teak or rubber is not just decoration. It is a sacrificial guard that absorbs the scrapes and bruises of real-world docking. When a 30,000-pound hull nudges a piling, the rub rail takes the force, protecting the critical seam where deck meets hull. On classic blue water boats, this joint is more than glued. It is stitched together with full-width fiberglass tabbing, layers of cloth hand-laid from the hull up onto the deck, creating a monolithic bond. Surveyors use a small hammer to tap along the seam, listening for the hollow thud that signals delamination, a warning that the structure has been compromised. In older boats, this tap test often reveals a solid, reassuring ring, proof of overbuilt craftsmanship. Modern production cruisers, in contrast, often sport only a cosmetic stripe and minimal tabbing, relying on adhesives and thin strips that can flex or even crack under repeated stress. When the hull-to-deck joint fails, water intrusion follows, leading to leaks and, over time, structural decay. The old approach is slower, heavier, and more expensive, but it transforms a vulnerable seam into an armored belt. For the Voyager, this is the difference between a hull that shrugs off years of abuse and one that surrenders to the first hard knock. Handholds everywhere transformed the interior of a classic sailboat from a rolling hazard into a controlled environment, even in the worst seas. In the 1970s, designers placed a grab rail within arm's reach, every 3 to 4 feet, along the cabin overhead, down the companionway, and beside every bunk. This was not decoration, it was life insurance. When the boat lurches or heels, a solid handhold means the difference between a bruised ego and a broken bone. Injury reports from offshore passages reveal a stark pattern. Boats with dense handhold networks see far fewer falls and far less severe injuries, while modern open-plan salons, designed for dockside entertaining, become pinball machines when the sea turns ugly. Crew members are flung across wide, unobstructed spaces, colliding with tables and cabinetry. Retrofitting handholds is now standard surveyor advice for anyone preparing a modern boat for blue water. An audit is simple. Count the steps from galley to nav station. If you cannot grab something every stride, you are at risk. In the end, handholds are not about tradition. They are about keeping your crew upright and your voyage on track when the world tilts without warning. And finally, in first place, the chain locker and Samson post form the anchor system's foundation, often overlooked until a storm puts them to the test. On a true ocean-going boat, the chain locker is a deep, gravity-fed compartment at the bow designed to swallow the entire anchor rode without fuss. As the chain piles up, gravity keeps it from snarling or jamming, even when the boat pitches and rolls. This isn't just about neatness. In heavy weather, a tangled chain at the wrong moment can turn retrieval into a crisis. The Samson post is a stout vertical timber or reinforced fiberglass pillar anchored deep into the hull. It takes the shock loads from the anchor rode, diverting forces that could rip a windlass clean off the deck. Modern shallow lockers, built to maximize interior space, often force the chain to coil beneath an electric windlass. When the wind picks up, snatch loads can spike 5 or 10 times the anchor's static weight, easily exceeding the windlass's stall torque and risking catastrophic failure. Surveyors look for chain lockers that keep water and chain away from the living space, and for Samson posts that show no signs of deck flex or stress cracking. The lesson is clear. A deep locker and a proper Samson post don't just protect the boat, they keep you anchored when it matters most. Lose this feature and you may not sink, but you'll find yourself adrift, engine dead, anchor dragging, with no easy way home. Across all 10 features, one pattern stands out. Every deletion traded raw survival for short-term comfort. These are not just quirks of old design, they are the backbone of true seaworthiness. Today's boats look sleek, but they inherit silent vulnerabilities. The lesson is simple. Real safety is not glamorous, it is engineered. When the sea tests your hull, only function-first thinking truly keeps you afloat. They do not make them like they used to. That is exactly the problem.